Right, this is our final session of the day, which is our finance and funding and the money section. Yes, heckling from the audience. It's the money section. And then it is the drinks section of the day. So we have drinks at Dear Grace, which is literally like just around the corner. Who's coming to drinks just so I can... Great, good, good. Well, there's plenty of drinks ordered, so please all do come for drinks. Okay, right, hello. So, hi. So, right, so completely losing my train of thought. Welcome, Franklin and Mike. Guys, do you want to just introduce yourselves and tell everyone what you do? And first of all, can I say before they start that Franklin runs a solution called Viable, which as a community, DTC Live has really got behind from the point of view we see so many brands having such difficulties and lack of visibility over their finances. One of the things that made Bolt Digital and DTC Live unique is our understanding, even when we were just an agency, that most people are trying to build assets that they want to sell. And in order to do that, they need to be able to realise the value of that asset and drive value into it. Now, that's extremely difficult to do if you don't know what's going on with your finances. So, Frank, would you start and introduce yourself and say what you do?
And CEO of Viable, which is, as Tash said, a finance technology which is designed specifically for D2C and multi-channel brands and helps them improve finance outcomes.
Brilliant. And Mike?
Hi, my name is Mike. I am a non-exec director and advisor to Paria, which is a challenger cycling brand and streetwear brand looking to do to cycling what brands like Vans and Santa Cruz did with skateboarding. My background is that I set up a brewery called Brixton Brewery. I'm one of the co-founders of the brewery, which we exited a few years ago. My business partners stayed involved in the business, and I now act as an advisor to the brewery and brands like Paria.
So it was fantastic when Mike and I first spoke, because obviously Mike's been through a pretty significant exit with the Brixton Brewery and is now using his skills and expertise, like many exited founders do, to help younger brands basically achieve that same journey. And I said to you, so how does this compare? Like, what's the financial state of, say, a brand and an e-commerce brand compared to, say, one like the business that you'd exited? Just tell me how different they are and what you thought when you first understood the financial challenges that e-commerce brands were facing.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the truth is I went in quite naively when I started working with Sam, the founder of Paria. He needed a model. He wanted to raise some funds. And I said, yeah, I build models, no problem. You know, we'd built models for the brewery for years. And I pretty much went into a wall, like from the beginning. You know, our advisor, when we were looking to work with Heineken with Brixton Brewery, advised me that most people get their expense base completely incorrect and underestimate it, but they're pretty good at projecting top line. So I've always felt that when building models, I'm pretty good at being very cautious about expenses and that I can usually understand the top line. But with a DTC business like Paria, where there's no sales team, all the sales is effectively digital marketing. I had literally no idea where to start on how to forecast the future top line
Does anyone else feel that pain? How to forecast the future top line of an e-commerce business?
Yeah, and I'd spent many years building models for the brewery, which were, quite accurate, fortunately. But that's when we were introduced to Frank and the team at Viable, who managed to help us make sense of all of the three-letter marketing acronyms that I didn't understand or know. Oh, I see. Okay. It sounds like mine still is. Yeah, and it was, it was transformative for us to actually understand. And, the primitive model that I built with Sam initially, really, I realize now was exactly that, very primitive compared to what we're getting now.
Yeah, and I think that's I think that's exactly right. So, I mean, Franklin knows as does the whole Viable team. We had a lot of models in Bolt Digital as an agency and in DTC Live, all aimed at answering the questions, if I spend this, what's going to happen? How's this going to work? And we were pretty proud of them as well. They've all been entirely superseded by technology, as they should be. So, Franklin, tell us what Viable does and how it works, and what are the challenges that most e-commerce brands are facing in finances?
Yeah, I suppose just speaking about modelling in particular, I think one of the main challenges and the main problems is around the format and the process. So you can spend a huge amount of time and energy building a really sophisticated model, and sometimes that means hiring someone internally to do it, sometimes it means paying a finance consultant to do it on an expensive day rate basis. And the problem is that, you know, once it's built, it's almost immediately out of date, right? Because everything changes on a daily basis. So you know, marketing performance and the cost of acquiring customers, operational costs, raw materials and cost of goods changes based on scale and all kinds of things. So I'd say really a lot of the problem is just on a traditional format. And so the product we actually launched with, went live with last year, was in essence a connected financial model. So connect systems and data to produce real-time finance measures so that early stage brands and founders could actually see the impact of all these daily changes on their finance outcomes and allow them to make really informed finance or investment decisions based on the impact on things like their forward-looking cash flow. So, yeah, I'd say that everyone should have a plan, and that plan is about how they get to certain outcomes, and those outcomes will change from brand to brand. Some brands may want to triple their top line. Other brands may want to just generate enough profit to start paying the founders a salary. Other brands may want to be the next Gymshark, but really for me, like the financial model is you know, the plan of how they get there. But if it's disconnected from what happens day to day, it becomes useless pretty quickly.
Yeah, and one of the things we see with brands is the lateness that they get their finances for the end of month. So, as Franklin says, the costs in e-commerce are really variable and changing all the time. Even things like, you know, international conflict that has nothing to do with anybody here creates variabilities in shipping costs, for instance. So there's all these variable costs. Who has their figures like live or on the first day of the next month, the month that's just ended, as brands? One person, okay. So, I mean, that's not uncommon, and then you really are in the dark in terms of what actually happened in the last month when you're waiting for your finance team to deliver figures that may come. When do you see figures coming into brand teams, say from the month prior?
Yeah, so essentially there's a daily P&L projection and forward-looking cash flow projection, so whatever's going on in the business, and again, this does change. For us, it's about removing the risk of either over-investing or under-invested and potentially not growing as fast. So it helps business owners and brands make the right investment decisions for things like how much they spend on marketing and customer acquisition, for things like how much inventory they order and when. Sometimes it's about optimizing payments in and out of the business to free up additional cash and working capital. But again, all these things are just totally dynamic, and so giving this picture of where brands are today and where they're going and what it looks like for us, we produce a forward-looking 13-week and a 12-month forecast, gives a lot of reassurance to brands.
Yeah, and there's viable customers we know within the DTC Live community who've thought they're going to have to raise money to do things like open shops or expand territories, and have realised thanks to Viable they don't need to. What difference does that make to them?
Yeah, so I mean, we work with VC-backed businesses. We work with businesses that are totally trying to grow on retained earnings in a bootstrap way, and we work with lots of brands that are trying to raise money. And I think in all of these cases, what Viable is giving them is the ability to prepare for and navigate different scenarios. Because if you are fundraising, that process could take longer. You know, the actual outcome is sometimes uncertain. If you just raise money, you want to deploy capital and make that capital work as hard as possible. If you're growing on retained earnings, as you mentioned, you really have to be quite careful with your investments and managing cash in and cash out because you're not well capitalized. So in all these scenarios, Viable is helping these brands really make the most of the money they have and put it to work.
Great. And Mike, so from the point of view of Paria in terms of raising money or preparing for a future exit, what difference do you think this type of daily live technology-powered finance data makes for them?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, Paria does need to raise money one way or the other through, you know, capital or debt, and the nature of the dynamic nature of the information being provided by Viable means that, you know, you've always got something presentable and that can be, you know, forwarded or presented to a potential investor. You know, it keeps you on your toes, whereas historically with a spreadsheet that needs to be, as you say, maintained and updated with each, change, and it's not live. It's a lot of work every time you need to present it. Whereas this is off the shelf, ready to go whenever you need it.
And one of the things I love that you said to me is he said in his advisory role, if he was asked to cut costs, he'd cut every cost before you would cut Viable.
Yeah.
Just, even all the staff.
Yeah. Honestly, like the idea of going back to doing this in my own spreadsheet, I would never want to do it again.
Frank, just tell us about onboarding for brands who are interested in working with Viable.
Yeah, it's really quick. So it's literally connecting systems and data, and very quickly can have this kind of visibility and insight that we're talking about, and then go very quickly into a cycle of ongoing support. So we, as well as automating finance measures and projections, we provide end-to-end support for both the onboarding and finance, I suppose, support, which is FD level support on a weekly basis, to answer questions on the data and provide the kind of strategic input which brands need on top.
I tell you what, guys, one thing that is really funny is you suddenly find these guys are in charge of brands. So you'll be talking to a brand, you'll be like, oh, what about this? And they'll say, oh, we have to ask Henry and Franklin. So you're taking control of a lot of brands, aren't you? Across.
I wouldn't say that, but I think
well, advisory, you have a very significant advisory role.
So I think for us, we absolutely believe that a big part of the job is getting the information, but then on the finance side in particular, there's a hugely important part in the strategic piece on top, and we do provide that internally to the brands we work with. We also have partners, because some brands will work with, let's say, a consultant CFO, and actually Mike was just saying that he thinks really the model going forwards of, let's say the brands that scale very quickly is not going to be to hire full-time finance teams, but actually to have, let's say, a consultant CFO that does the strategic piece on top of Viable, which does the automation and streamlines operations and those kind of things.
Brilliant. So you'll be around, won't you, for people who want to ask you questions?
Absolutely, yeah. And Henry and Ian at the back, and I guess they're the real finance experts, so they're around for questions and drinks afterwards as well.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.